Hello everyone, we are here today with Philip.
Hello.
Who is a former NG gunner and conscript of the Swiss Army. By the way, we're also in Switzerland. Everything you see here is completely legal. And we will talk about judging World War weapons by modern and to a certain degree also civilian standards. So, because in our opinion, we talked about this quite a lot, there are some misconceptions out there because some people apply like modern day thinking or circumstances, not like the circumstances that were prevalent, for instance, in World War II. Now, one topic that I think that came up and triggered me to this was basically talking about the carbine 98K from the Germans, that it went too hot and so it's hard to use or continue shooting. And for me, the main look at it is basically you're comparing keyboard warriors of nowadays who have a very thin-skinned with people, mostly farmers from the Second World War, that usually had a very thick, horny skin. And I actually once we were shooting here, and it was quite funny because Philip, who is like myself a keyboard warrior, used an asbestos glove to test the barrel temperature.
Change the barrel on the...
And he was like, okay, it's still too hot. And then like half a minute later, one guy came up to the barrel and I said, it's still too hot. And he was, really? And he touched it with his bare hand and was like, no, it's not that hot. And I was like, what is going on? I went to you and you told me, that's our welder. He does this all the time. It's like, so you have also some experience like with heat, like I think your father was a baker.
Yeah, my father was a baker and he would take the hot plate from the oven by bare hands and place it beside. And if I want to do it now, I would be
blisters and everything.
I would burn myself pretty bad. Yes.
And this is the thing in the Second World War, a large portion of the population were still farmers, and I also worked at a farm. After university at one point, there was one guy and he showed me his hands and they were really dirty in a way, and he just said, this grows out because the dirt was actually under his skin. So you can't really compare this nowadays. And another point which you encountered is like that people note the strong recoil of machine guns.
Yes, this I hear a lot, that people with not a lot of experience shooting fully automatic machine guns, not submachine guns in particular, but machine guns, they feel a strong push and a strong recoil, and I can't see anything, everything's shaky, and they don't have the experience. You need a little bit of training in the army, you get trained to do that. You have to really push into the gun and you have to master the gun and you have to bring a bit of body weight behind the gun. So if you're really too light a person, this will push you around. If you have, like me, a little bit too much, then it's not really an issue. And this is something, really, well, not annoy me, it doesn't annoy me, but it's really something you have to put in perspective, that people at the time of Second World War were a little bit sturdier frame. They were used to manual labor much more than we are. I have friends too that work in construction. For them, carrying something from one place to the other is, I do it all day, okay. For me, it's like 3 times and I'm done. And we have to be careful that if one person judges a weapon by office standards or civilian office standards, it doesn't really mean that it's a problem for the army. Yeah.
And this is also another point that comes up. When you go to war, you send the young guys, the 20-year-old guys. These people are generally way more tolerant to pain, endurance and everything. Yeah. So I did stuff when I was in my 20s. It was fine. I mean, I think there's this example one when I was working at the construction site. At one point they said like, when we were in our 20s, we were drinking all night and then we went to work and nothing happened. And nowadays we drink on Saturday evening and we still feel it on Monday morning in our 40s or something. Yeah. And so in the army, you get also the drill. So this is also a major difference. I made a video of what I learned from my military service. And if you never have been in a military service or another extreme situation, you have no idea what your body and also mind is capable of doing. Mm-hmm. I saw this for the mind, I saw it with studying history and computer science. In computer science, we had a large amount of dropouts. In history, there were no dropouts at all. There were no Fs, basically, and there were a lot of Fs in computer science. So a lot of people had to step up their game to improve their mental capabilities or to be more efficient. Not necessarily in history.
Yeah.
And the same
different
is with
standards, different fields. Yes.
The same is with the army. Mm-hmm. I had days like I can't do anything anymore, and all my comments were the same. And then NCO comes in, screams around, everyone runs around like crazy, and suddenly you keep on going another 3 hours or so running out in the field. Yeah. And this is then you see, because your mind sometimes tell you that you can't do something, whereas it's just not true. As I said once, I think in my video, your mind lies to you, or your perception of yourself. And this is also, I think, there are many videos out there, I think Jocko Williams and others, that tell you, you think you can't do it anymore, but in reality, you're just about sometimes at 10% of your potential.
Yeah. We had similar occurrences when I was 20 years old. I did military service in the Swiss Army, and the Army decided that this box of 10 kilo you can carry around with one hand, and we give you another for the other hand. And we give you 3 on the back. So this is 10 kilo, 30 on the back. And mountain warfare. The Army said, you're young, you can do it. I was able to do it when I was 20. Today, even holding this for a longer period of time is no.
So you told me you had the same, you were lately at the same position,
yes.
Where you ran around as a 20-year-old, and now and you couldn't shoot anymore because you were panting.
We have a shooting range in the Alps. It's an army shooting range, and I trained there in the Rekrutenschule in the army when I was 20 with the machine gun and everything. And we go regularly there from our shooting club. And if I carry a steel plate to shoot at, I breathe a little bit harder. My knees hurt. I'm now past 40 years old, so yes, I have to accept this. And I'm not trained. At that time, I was well trained. And this is something people forget, that if they can't lift it now, when they're 40 years old, probably with 20 years old, with 3 weeks or 4 weeks of military drill training, you can. Because they will make sure you can.
Yeah.
It's not a democracy in an army. You have not like a free will. Everybody that did service knows this, that your opinion doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
If they say you can do it, you will do it. And they will make you do it. And I think it's the same for every army.
It's pretty much that.
Yeah.
And another aspect which sometimes get neglected, adrenaline. So there's quite a difference for pain reception, everything. You might notice you like doing sports and everything is fine because you're in the middle of a game, in a match, and you're about winning and nothing hurts. And later on you suddenly start to limp and everything. And for me, there's a similar experience when I was at Coneo, Ohio, the D-Day reenactment. I got a uniform and boots, and first time ever I had these boots. So I immediately got blisters. And we were at the assembly point, and then we went down to the beach. And I was limping down there because my feet hurt already. And then we were going over to the beach where we basically started the assault. And it started with getting off the dock and screaming around and some firing, and immediately adrenaline kicked in. And this is a reenactment, so there's no threat or anything. Adrenaline kicked in. I didn't feel any of my blisters for the next half hour or however this took. We ran across the field. I mean, there's a video out there where we see a first-person perspective. Adrenaline, everything, no pain at all. I ran like crazy, I panted everything, but I had no pain of my blisters. Mm-hmm. And then when I finally got off my socks, the skin flew away because they were not blisters anymore, they were gone. And then it hurt again. But I mean, basically, when we went back from the beach, it started hurting again. So once the adrenaline drops. And this is a very simple and easy scenario. In combat, your life is at stake, your adrenaline level and everything is way higher. So your pain tolerance is probably even way more off. This is also if you're shooting like in like not a garage and a shooting range or something nowadays, you probably have a little bit of adrenaline, but it's probably not comparable as to being on the Eastern Front when the Soviets shoot at you, or when you're on the Eastern Front and the Germans shoot at you, or in Normandy on either side. So this is also another aspect that often gets a bit forgotten.
Yes. Also, when you listen to people with gun reviews, they're mostly calm at the shooting range, filming several times the take and everything, and they're pretty relaxed, and then suddenly it hurts. But if you see hundreds of Russian soldiers storming to your position, everything's exploding around you, I don't really care about your shoulder. It's just you want to survive, and this is really something that puts your mind into a different state. And the army tries to mimic that a little bit with realistic exercise. In the Swiss army, we always have live fire, and I was in a machine gun group. The Swiss army had a different concept of light machine gun, heavy machine gun. They were mostly only heavies. We were in training, shoot over other enemy or our friendly troops, and you had the means of measurement was your thumb. Okay, you as a gunner, you had adrenaline rush as well, because you see the heads, the steel helmets running down the field, and you would provide suppressive fire. And you see the traces flying in that direction. This is really something that is not a physical stress for you, but a mental.
Yeah.
And this, for them, when I started shooting the first time, everyone dove for cover. Everyone got into cover in front of you, although you were shooting way over them. But you see tracers and you hear the noise. Then they were saying like, I hit my knee, but I didn't feel it. One of the friends in the front rows, he said, he had bleeding all over it. I hit my knee, I didn't feel anything. I just wanted to get in cover from you. And he was on my side, so he was not an enemy in that sense. And yeah, so it's really, it puts you in a state of mind that pain is not important.
Yeah. And this brings us to the final point, because mainly, well, let's call it ignoring military concepts. So like what army, what doctrine, and all this, like one aspect, for instance, you always tell me, a machine gun is not used as a single weapon usually.
Yes. It's in the Germans it was a Schützengruppe weapon, and it was always like a platoon size that would engage squad size, or
okay, what engage? So Schützengruppe is a squad.
Yeah.
But basically, so usually not below company level.
Yeah.
Platoon company level is usually what they note in the tactics. Like you don't engage usually in just a group, in just a squad.
Yeah. And for instance, most machine guns, either in light or heavy, are manned by 2 or more people in the first place. So if you do this alone, you see a lot of problems that are not really a problem. And when you then adapt it to the bigger groups that you train with, then suddenly, no, that's not really an issue. You have another job, you have you don't see, I have to do a barrel change after that many rounds. Yeah, but you're 4 people. Who's going to carry the ammo? Yeah, you're 4 people. It goes on, and then you can company levels, brigade training, etc. Then you realize that you're just one person in a big mess that tries to train combat. And then you start to realize the benefits or the influences from doctrine on strategy or tactical levels that went into the weapon. Because in our opinion, every army gets the machine guns they want for their doctrine. So British had a different doctrine probably than the Germans, than the Russians, than the Americans. And that you see in influences of firearms.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't mean that their doctrine might be incorrect. So sometimes it doesn't fit properly. But usually they are designed and adopted, and you see, okay, we have this and this idea, and then you apply to that.
Yeah.
Because I remember, I mean, in my early days of this channel, somebody asked, what will be infantry doctrine in the future? And for me, the first question I was asked, what are your strategic situation? What country are you? Are you like Austria in the middle of Europe, a small country surrounded? Or are you the United States, where you do international interventions more or something?
Yeah.
And this is all what you think. I mean, if you look at the British in the Second World War, before the Second World War, the British always focused on their main line of defense was the Navy. And then, of course, in the 30s or 20s already, the Air Force also came up. But the army for the British was usually always at the very end. They look at the army very differently, whereas the Germans always, the first line of attack and defense is always, or was always, the army. The Navy was mostly a problem because they couldn't get out of the North Sea or the Baltic and everything.
It's really, it's really where do you have to bring that weapon to effect? Yeah. And the MG42 and the 34 probably will have problems somewhere in the jungles of I don't know where. For Eastern Front, they worked okay. You bring the guns to the place where you want to invade or defend. The Swiss army, for instance, had a concept more of a defensive army because we are neutral, we don't attack anybody in that sense. The concept then shows into the weapons. A lot of ideas in the Swiss arms development went into you fight from prepared positions. Either in the forest, in the cities, or in the Alps. You mostly have a defensive advantage, and that influenced the weapons design. Like the MG51 I served on was mostly used on the Erzi-Lafette tripod, and we hardly ever used it as a bipoded weapon. And the same goes for the Gurttrommel. We had a Gurttrommel, we hardly ever used it. The drum, yeah. We hardly ever used it because we only used from the box.
On the belt, because you assume a prepared position or something.
Yes, you were, this is defensive line, this is the fallback line, this is the third fallback line if you have to go further. And the concept was also that we, as a machine gunner, we were never front line. We were always support, and this is why we always placed it on a tripod, because we had wanted to have that range advantage. So we had a lot of training, shooting targets 800 meters plus. We always joked, if the enemy gets to 400 meter setting under scope, you better find another position. And this is really, Doctrine motivates these weapons. Even the PPS 43, this was really, the 41 is okay, but we need something fast, cheaper, easier, more reliable, probably in a certain sense. We don't need the drums anymore. This is a perfect submachine gun for Russian army. Is it good enough for the Americans? I don't know. They had a grease gun as well in the late wars. It worked for them as well. So keep that in mind, that only because you don't understand the concept or don't understand the idea behind the machine gun, because maybe it's lost in doctrine or strategy or tactics, it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah. So as always, context is very important, because only in the context of the time and the situation most aspect can be really understood, and some stuff that doesn't make sense at first or might be look as a disadvantage might be an advantage or not a disadvantage at some point.
Yes.
Okay, well then thank you very much, Philip.
Welcome.
And thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.